Paul, welcome back. We just had a awesome conversation with Audrey Udegbe. It was fun. It was funny. We talked about three-speed problem, how AI is making delivery development so much faster, how we speed up the parts of the process where humans have to talk to humans to figure out what to build and how to get it in customers' hands. What'd you get?
Well, I'll get the fun stuff out of my system first because the sci-fi reference at the end, the Broken Earth trilogy, and just on a serious note, thinking about things in the fictional space as a storytelling medium, I think is underrated. So I think product managers need to read more fiction. Full stop. The other thing that I was kind of struck by is how the thinking about product in the future as a sparring partner via AI. The idea that product might be ephemeral in the sense that we were thinking about things in basically 40-year-old processes. The mythical man month and the engineering bottlenecks are now largely obsolete, and now we have to get used to a new speed, and decision making at that scale and that speed is going to take some real grit for product managers to start to think through. So I had a blast with this conversation. I think OG is a brilliant thinker for the right person in the right moment to be sharing this kind of knowledge.
Absolutely. Let's have a listen. Today's episode, we have a special guest joining in the co-host chair. Paul Gable, original co-host of Product Momentum, is joining me. And today we have Audrey Udezue. He helps transform products into market-defining success. He's led product teams at some of the most recognizable companies out there: Calendly, Atlassian, Typeform, and Microsoft. I have two of those tools actively open on my computer right now. He's also a co-author with his wife, Ezinne. They've written Building Rocketships, Product Management for High-Growth Companies. Have it right here, a book that lays out frameworks for turning startups into market-dominating forces through product-led growth. Beyond that, right, Audrey is a mentor to the next generation of product leaders. He's a pioneer in applying AI tools for building better products. And I've had the privilege of hearing him speak at multiple industry conferences. And we're really thrilled to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. That was a really great intro. I don't think I have anything much more to add, unless you want me to.
No, I mean, let's jump right in. Um, lot going on in the world. Seems like, AI advancements are coming, daily, hourly. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on how that's impacting us as product folks, right? What's changing? What's staying the same?
So, I think this is a moving question for me. I get asked this a lot, but I think the main thing is sort of defining what product management is from first principles, and then trying to see if AI does anything to it. All right, I think that's a fair way to think about it. And so I think of product management as pointing technology much more closely to customers, meaning that we divine customer pain, customer need, um, what makes their lives less toilsome, what makes it more delightful, what makes them feel like, oh my God, this was like 5 times better than what I did before. Um, and this is something we call the zone of benefit. And it makes them want to lean in once they wants to, to think about the first time you downloaded an app store. I guess I'm showing my age and how you felt. You're like, oh my God, like I can't have this, that feeling. And then the second part is we try to make it so that the companies we work for, whether it's yours or a startup or something else, make money from that innovation, from that feeling. That's really it, right? Customer happiness, shareholder happiness, and probably your happiness because you're the biggest shareholder. Um, in the middle is customer science, building orchestration, and go to market. Now, the tools are changing, but the fundamentals aren't changing at all, I would say. And so the only difference is product managers have to learn the new tools of creativity, the new tools of value, the new tools of selling. But I think the overarching thing that they learn to do, this apprenticeship, this special apprenticeship, is not going to change very much. I think just how to do it will change.
We were having a conversation recently with Teresa Torres about discovery and AI, and she had made a quip about how, you know, we with AI tools, we're all so fast to be like, hey, I can come up with an agent that will represent my customers for me.
Mm.
How do we make sure, as it gets easier and easier to, kind of talk to a pretend human, that we don't lose, the sight of the interactions with real humans, or our real users, real customers?
Yeah, I saw that kerfuffle on the internet. It's such an interesting thing where the product subculture is so big now that we have fights in public space. It's quite a completely amusing. This is I was just in a I was just in a conversation with Melissa, who's a good friend of mine, and I saw a post she made. So I was talking to her like this week, but I saw a post she made and Teresa jumped in. Look, I think it's really simple. I don't think the pattern for using AI in general is not generative. We call it generative stuff, but the way you use it shouldn't be generative at all. I think you create the core IP and then use it as an assistant to make it better, to find variations and so on and so forth. So I would not start talking to synthetic anything for anything. I think that's a huge mistake. But often, if you're a founder or you're even a feature PM, you have very small sample sizes, right? Especially if you're building something new. Synthetic data and synthetic users can be used to scale your already synthesized human-driven insights, right? Because really, the synthetic data is about mirroring the variation in humans about a thing. But if you don't have the nucleus of a real human about a thing, what are you scaling exactly? And how can you even compare if the scaling is off kilter? And so don't start with synthetic anything, start with real, and then use synthetic to scale it so that you can tell when the scaling is going off the reservation.
I think it's really profound. The way that you're talking is reminding me of a thought I heard recently about how now that intelligence is commoditized, intelligence used to be a rarity. Expertise used to be hard to gain through, the school hard knocks. And now that
Especially PM expertise, by the way, because you can be a PM for 10 years and still be a shitty PM because the people who taught you aren't that good. And there is no university to teach you. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, I point taken.
We just got our tagline.
That's absolutely the valid take, and that's kind of where I'm headed, because now that intelligence is so commoditized and widely accessible, wisdom doesn't scale as fast as intelligence. And your comment about first principles kind of reminded me of that. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on how, for the past 10, 15, even 20 years, expertise with tools and processes used to be synonymous with expertise in product. But now that tools, processes are outpacing those first principles so quickly, how do we build those checks and balances into our organization so that product has a fighting chance of even retaining first principles before boardrooms and shareholders and stakeholders get a hold of how fast and commoditized things can start to move?
Yeah, I think one of the conversations we had leading up to this, we talked about judgment, right? And I think the thing that we said was that if judgment, if AI tools are so prevalent, like what is judgment? And look, I think I keep saying like PMs are the judgment layer of the creative process of building technology companies. I think that's our job, and because one of the things we say at ProductMind is that things are moving fast, but you can move fast in the wrong direction. And so it's about PMs are what point organizations that build technology, well, could, in the right direction. And I think it requires judgment. It requires taste making. This is why we love Steve Jobs, because he was a taste maker. So yeah. So and by the way, I think, but the other thing that I think is people need to understand what judgment is, right? Judgment is continuous good decisions. That's what it is. It's not one good decision. It's not two or three. It's a lot of them where you're mostly right. And the other thing about judgment is that it has to be speedy, right? If you make one good decision and only one good decision every 3 months, then that's terrible. What you need to be doing is making one good decision every day, right? And then after 30 days, you've made 30 good decisions, and boom, now Bob's your uncle. You're in business. So judgment comes from maybe two things in my career. One is listen to people who are smarter than you, right? Because you don't want to make bad decisions just because you were a dumbass and you didn't listen, no matter how smart you are. The second thing is just doing stuff and making mistakes. Because if you're paying attention, you're going to get the feedback loop, right? If you do a lot of experimentation, you gain judgment for free versus gaining judgment on the dime of your customers, for example. But you have to do, not just think, perseverate, right? You got to do. And then you get to the point where your intuition about the thing, about what customers want, about what they care about, the frameworks you're using, like one I use all the time is simplicity. And this idea of cognitive load. Like I look at the thing and I'm asking myself, can people do this thinking, or they can do it with their spinal cord? That's simplicity. Right? If you can do it with your spinal cord, then you're not thinking, it's intuitive. You feel it. And there's some user experiences where you feel that, for example. So judgment is always going to be required. In an age where AI is speeding up everything, judgment is going to be premium. Humanness is going to be premium, and judgment is one of the big parts of humanness when it comes to the creative process. If you think all those NFTs were worth a lot of money, just check out what a Basquiat is going to be like in 10 years. It's going to be like $1 billion. So anyway, there's got to be more crashes. It will come from scar tissue. And how the boardroom will appreciate it is that it will create more returns, right? Because it will be right.
You said a couple of things there that really struck me. I mean, right, one is as product managers, kind of making sure that we're hooking ourselves up with product leaders who are providing good mentorship. But you said something else that really struck is like, right, you build judgment by messing up, right? Like you learn good decisions by making bad decisions. When you're mentoring product leaders, what advice you have for creating a space that allows product managers to make bad decisions, to make mistakes?
Yeah. I think the first level is sparring, right? Make decisions and share it with your team, and they will tell you whether it's a bad decision or not. And even if, the person who says it's a bad decision, they're wrong. Maybe there are 5 people, wisdom of the crowd and all that stuff, right? And, it's the more powerful thing about that process isn't you're wrong. It's why do I think you're wrong? And then engaging in the debate that says, you know what? I don't think I'm wrong. Like, no, think about it this way. And no, you are wrong. Think about it that way. So I think that's the first level. The second one is just experimentation. Like, don't release things to 10,000 people. Try and release it to 5, right? Um, and again, don't underestimate. Release stuff to the finance department. They don't know what's going on in the product. They don't give a shit. That's not their thing. They're trying to do the money. And so when you pull them and ask them questions or show them something, they are like external people, and they will tell you whether it's shitty or not. And then 5 real customers, 10 real customers, because they're always willing to co-build with you. It's a privilege. They're like, oh my God, really? I can weigh in this early. I feel special. Right? And that's good. And then, of course, I worked on Windows, and sometimes we release things to 1 billion people and we screw up. Right? I remember being in war rooms in Windows where we shipped a bug or something, and then someone really reaming you out because, but releasing the bug to 1 billion people at Microsoft was just another Tuesday. So like we had a way to deal with it. So yeah, I think those are the levels of sparring that you can do in order to gain wisdom without necessarily blowing up the world.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, right? As a day-to-day product manager, nothing makes me more nervous than, like, kind of running an idea and not having anybody challenge it. It's like, "Guys, please challenge this. It's probably not that good an idea."
Yeah. Oh, it just has nuances you didn't think of, right? Like it's just that's the nature of the game. This is why, by the way, not being political, we still need a lot of diverse brains. And I think diversity is no longer a popular thing for us to talk about. But in the creative process of technology, building technology comes very specifically, you can't just think from every angle everybody else. I actually think that the reason that Microsoft screwed up Gen 1 of Xbox is because they didn't hire people who look like gamers. They just didn't. Who were tastemakers. It was just a bunch of technology people trying to build a great fast platform. It sucked. But over in Nintendo land, they had the people who were very creative that looked like their customers, and that was the difference.
Yeah. I as you're talking, biting my tongue off not to go down a video game rabbit trail, so I'm gonna reel it back into product land so I don't get distracted. The idea that, the people that you're mentoring, and the guidance that you're providing, I think one of the opportunities with AI in thought workers, toolboxes, especially in product, is that you mentioned 5, 10 beta users can be valuable and internal finance people are functionally external users. I love that. The other thing that AI provides is we can now, whether through agents or just so very little sophistication required, prompt some training, like a piano player practices scales for 8 hours a day. Largely what product and design and engineers do, they're performing live for the first time in front of the client. We don't get to practice scales where we're kind of doing it live all the time. And now with AI, we have the ability to hone our chops a little bit. And while synthetic data has its shortfallings, you've outlined a couple already. I do think that there is an upside where AI can help us hone our craft a little bit and be more of a place to challenge our assumptions, to improve our confidence. How do you view AI as a training tool, not just a synthetic data set or a faster QA? How can AI be used to help bring product up overall as kind of that piano player practicing their scales analogy, or does that land in mentoring conversations that you have?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that I fully agree. I think that I think AI has limitations in giving you judgment.
Mhm.
Um, I think AI has advantages in scaling customer science, but I don't know that it's a shortcut to the practice itself. The only way I can think of it as a practice is there's this idea like everything we build seems so permanent, right? It feels like because of how long it takes, there's a certain gravitas to a thing. If it takes a month or two, you don't want to break it. It feels precious. It feels like China to you. But if it takes a day, it feels more impermanent. It feels more disposable. So you can punch it a bit and you can shape it however you want. I think that's the way I think that AI will accelerate the craft is we will embrace impermanence and then use the early variations as a way to find the perfect thing. And I think that that process of using AI to churn out the danger with churning out many variations is that you get fatigued, right? You get fatigued. But if you do it properly, not too much, but not too little, you can use it to practice, like the scales thing.
Mhm.
You can use it to test. Even this is something super simple. You can make 10 variations of a document with Claude or with OpenAI. And even if it's not about the what, it's not solving a thing, even if it's just about which variation of this does my boss like, now you have 10 ways to figure out, right? And there's something important there because very quickly you find out the right one. I'm an PTSD from writing specs, back in the day, and then being afraid
Yep.
and getting into a room and being reviewed by 10 people who could decide your bonus or your salary, but you only made one. And there's only way, there's only, but you know how the trick is, you sort of, uh, you review before the review. What if you reviewed multiple different versions and you got feedback? So by the time you got to the actual review, you reviewed the perfect one.
Yep.
That kind of thing can help you with that.
Yeah. Point well taken about it's certainly not a shortcut to judgment. And I would never imply that. I think what you're getting at about generating 10 versions of the PRD is more along the lines of this idea that I've heard called proto thinking. So it's not thinking, it's thinking about how we think. So when you're prompting an AI, you're not telling it necessarily all the steps. You're thinking through how you think about problems, and that externalization of thought is what's been valuable for me, because now I it's kind of like the explain like I'm five trope. I have to tell someone else. I have to teach someone, and you develop expertise by teaching. So AI for me has become a boon because now I'm able to tell someone else how I'm thinking about a problem, which has in turn made me a better problem solver because I'm getting it out of my head. I'm not staying up here. I have to be able to explain what the problem is in ways that I never used to have to before. So
I like that idea of, and this connects to something we already talked about, AI as sparring partner,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I think it's just because of the modality we use now. I use AI a lot to architect stuff. Like I have my architect brain, and then but I have to explain it to someone who's going to do something. It's like a contractor, and I think you're right. The act of explaining it sometimes clarifies your thoughts, just like and some. I remember working in a pod, like 1 p.m. A few developers. The developers don't really function as that. I need another PM, and those other PMs are busy building their thing. So AI as a sparring partner is pretty dope. I like that.
love it.
Why don't you want to shift gears a little bit? At industry, you've been speaking about the 3-speed problem. Uh, I personally love to get a refresher on it. And for the right listening who weren't at industry, what is it? Why is it important?
Yeah. So let me just set it up. So uh for the past 30 years or longer, actually since the digital revolution, we've been constrained by engineering speed. All right. The biggest cost to the technology company is paying developers or hardware designers or whatever it is, right? Because I'm not assuming it's all software. And so this is where the ratios come from, 1 PM, 7 developers, or whatever that looks like in terms of our averages. So fewer developers, fewer designers, because building is difficult. And building is difficult because of the way that we program CPUs. But in a world where code is just language and architecture, meaning you can speak Tagalog or Hindi, but if you have an engineering mind, a constructor's mind, a master constructor's mind, let's go back to Lego, then you can write code. You don't need to learn syntax anymore. Um, yeah, that's what code is. And also, one of the big capabilities of large language models is content generation. And that content can be English, or it can be Hebrew, or it can be code. Um, of course, it can also be pictures and architectural plans or whatever else you train it for. Well, that means that we now have infinite code engines, basically. And so code is not going to be scarce within 5 to 10 years. It will be just everywhere. And it already is everywhere, basically. Now, think about that. There are three things that companies do to build great technology products, and also three layers to building a technology company, which is an entirely different thing. But for the product side, it is customer science, it is, again, construction of software or hardware. And then it's the moving from that into getting into customers' hands, telling stories, staging it and packaging it, whatever you want to do. That middle thing, the building, the construction, used to take all the time, right? So typically you start with maybe a month to synthesize customer science. Take you 3 months, you've broken up into sprints, and at the end, someone releases something more invaluable. This middle thing is going to take no time at all, right? In theory, right? Because it has to go through people, we understand the mythical man month. It will not be nothing, but it is something, but it's much faster. Theoretically 10x, say, but maybe even more. Um, and these two things, because they depend on people, right? You gotta do customer science because you talk to people, not just synthetic people. And then of course you gotta sell this to people because they're gonna give you dollars, right? You're not gonna just sell it to their agents. Maybe one day you will sell it to their agents. Who knows? Um, but it's an unbalanced equation. If you do any math, your equation just became unbalanced. And we spent a lot of time balancing that equation, 40 years, right? Waterfall, test-driven development, agile, name every variation of people who understand, life cycle, software lifecycle management. And the debates rage on, they rage on. So we now have to rebalance it. And honestly, because that part was some of the hardest things we did, it's going to take some time. So this is what we call the 3-speed problem. Um, at the industry, what I said, the trope I used was like your CEO is going to code the feature and then he's going to be like, ship it. And you're going to be stuck. You're going to be like, holy shit, this dude controls everything. He wants me to ship his shitty code, which has SQL injection errors. Now, what do I do now? So, um, that's a 3-speed problem. All of us are going to spend a lot of time balancing that equation, finding the practices, the team structure, the team ratios, um, the new AI tools that help us keep this thing fast because we want to slow it down, but then speed up customer science and speed up GTM. Um, and I think the next few years, from Lovable to whatever comes next, will be about figuring that stuff out. And there'll be a lot of money made when people figure it out. I didn't offer a solution, but I guess I'm pointing out a problem. And of course, at ProductMind, we have recommendations for speeding up customer science and solution, problem discovery and solution creation. Uh, we spend very little time on the go-to-market, which is a mistake, by the way. I think that there's a place where there's a huge amount of opportunity for product people and product thinkers and founders.
I mean, identifying the problem is kind of a key step, right? As opposed to just spinning around in circles, hoping that it just works out for us, right? That kind of brings us back to the first principles that you were mentioning, right? The first part of the 3 speeds and, doing discovery. I'm curious then, in this new world, what are the skills that product managers really need to double down on? You've mentioned storytelling. What else?
Yeah, look, I think there are some old skills that I want to mention because I think that even those are worth bringing up because a lot of PMs don't have them. I think there is leadership, you know, learning, being the kind of person that people follow. All of that has to do with judgment and so on. There's communication, which is it's like being a point guard. The team got to know what they're doing, right? Everybody, up, down, sideways, right? Downwards. There's customer science, all the things in the grab bag of PM of interviewing, synthesis, applying, creativity, coming up with a solution. There's creativity itself, which is, two people can look at a problem well defined, and so some come up with like a pedestrian solution, and another one comes up with a brilliant solution. You look at it, you're like, holy shit, we didn't even think of that. That's creativity. And then of course it's just the ability to ship. All right. You gotta put code into people's hands. You gotta put code in people's hands. You gotta keep doing it. And so those are the five things that I personally look for when I hire, and I've hired like hundreds of PMs. But now because the tools have changed, because the world has changed, even though people appreciate it or not, what are the new skills you're going to layer on top of that? Because those skills don't ever go away. But what are you going to lean on it? And so the way I talk about this is, the first thing is just like curiosity, right? We are in day one, as Bezos would say. We're day one. I know nothing now, and you know nothing. Our instinct is to protect our experience, or maybe your high salary. And if you do that, you're like, oh yeah, I'm still the man. I still know people. I still know shit. But look, very few people made it from pre-internet to internet, right? The old people were protecting their egos, and they got swept away because they tried to build the old thing they built in the new way. But the new medium that required brand new thinking, and so you know, maybe they were already rich, but a lot of people weren't rich. They just lost their job. So the point being, you got to come at this with curiosity, with some humility, and then the last one is agency, right? Agency meaning whatever you learn, turn it into action, turn it into suggestions. Don't just tell the salesperson you can't have the feature. You say, well, you can't have that one because that's dumb. But how about this new thing that we could do? We make some money and you can get your bonus and I get some stuff into customers' hands. You need to have agency. You need to not wait for permission to build a prototype of something that your organization cannot imagine, but gives 10x acceleration. And then you say, hey, 10x acceleration, doesn't that sound good? How about all these your stupid like restrictions that I can't use ChatGPT? What do you think of it now? And that's how you go. That's how you go forward. And so I talk a lot about that. But look, the hard skills are already coming to focus. It's, you got to be able to prompt really well. You got to be able to write evals. You have to be a PM, a Renaissance PM. You have to build a prototype. You got to build the first two prototypes or three, right? That's your new spec. Your prototype is a new PRD. Why would you write a document in 2025? No, by the way, I say that as a joke. A prototype without the markers of why it's important, meaning like what's the vision, what problem you're solving. You know, because code is just code. It's like a picture, right? But it's not just a picture. Like in iOS, in the EXIF data, you can add more information, right? So we're gonna create the EXIF of our prototypes and add the information about the vision, the goals, and the what and why it's important, why are we doing this. But if you just pass on a prototype, it's it becomes completely fungible. It becomes ephemeral. Yeah, and so that's what we should do. Not developers write code. We write code and tell why. We write prototypes and say why this prototype matters and why the ways to take it forward and explore in places that are unknown. But that's way worth more than a picture or a nice Figma, if that makes sense.
Right.
So that's what I will say. Yes, I would say curiosity, humility, agency, and beneath that, the evolving skill sets of constraining models properly, writing actual code versus writing PRDs. Um, uh, building process. Like one of the things we do is like the point guard is the guy who sets up how the thing moves. That's process, right? So what is the new SDLC process on your squad that you've optimized? You got to be able to construct that, if that makes any sense. These are some of the skill sets that are emerging that we need to build.
You're sparking so many thoughts. I have two quick follow-ups and one last question. The first is, you mentioned the skills about communication, and I think the golden rule of communication, you have two ears and one mouth, so you should be listening twice as much as you speak. I think it's so easy to churn out AI slop, and you know, we can all kind of detect it. Our AI meter, you know, we've all kind of calibrated to like, oh, like obviously that's copy and paste. So I think learning to listen more and communicate well means that we're editing, we're going through the problem solving and crafting and drafting process. I think that's more important now than ever. That was the first thought that I had. The second was your mention of ephemeral. This is probably a whole separate podcast in and of itself, but as a futurist, I believe that the UI of the future is going to be much less about a user journey as we've thought about it in the past. Like, I have a problem, I'm going to go from step A to B, and I'm going to have these delights and experiences and frustrations and goals. And it's going to be much more like the UI asks us what we want, and then it just does it. And then the pixels will generate and then be dismissed when they're no longer needed. I believe that products in the future are going to be much less about screens and widgets and chiclets and drawers and tiles and more about what do you want to do, and then it just kind of does it. Again, that's probably a conversation for another day. But the last question that,
I
yeah,
want
go ahead.
to, I want to weigh in on that.
Please.
I do think that in the gaming world, we've always had generated. There's this whole trope about generated worlds, right?
Mhm.
Generated experiences, and in the last 5 years, they've become pretty sophisticated. Like this game, I don't play games because I don't have any time, but I pay attention to the innovations there. And I think there's this open world game where you can basically explore like, almost an infinite set of planets, and it's all procedurally generated.
No Man's
And
Sky.
so, No Man's Sky, there you go. There's a gamer right there. So, you've been identified, brother.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
So,
Probably.
so No Man's Sky, when obviously all the clones that come after it, um, so that's exactly what's going to happen with user experiences. The one of the capability, I don't like using the word artificial intelligence, right? I talk about 5 things that intelligence gives you, and your unique things that it gives in the toolbox. One is content generation. The other is NLP, in and
Mhm.
out. The third is data synthesis, right, and correlation. Fourth is um, uh, autonomy, right? And I think the fifth is, I keep forgetting the fifth always. When I talk about this, I forget the fifth. But anyway, uh, the interesting thing, personalization. That's right. And that's the one I actually needed. So these things can personalize to 8 billion people, which is risky. Ethically, this is like mad, right? If you thought Google was like targeting content to you, or Twitter or TikTok, like we're about to enter an era of pure separation. Everything is for you. So, but the point is, at least for user experiences, is you will go to any of these AI experiences, it will sort of memorize stuff about you. And then if you want to drive software, it will generate the user experience that's for you, that you understand. Again, it will use some of the principles that I've talked about, simplicity, but you will understand it. And the next person comes at the same thing, and to generate the thing that they can understand, if that makes any sense. So yeah, we're gonna have procedurally generated user experiences, and it will be amazing, right? Because then the learning curve of software, which we've dealt with forever, from command line to menus, will disappear. And then this will become a truly like species changing thing. Like it'll be accessible to everyone, which is, yeah, as you can tell, hopefully I'm telling a good story right now. It'll be amazing.
I just heard a bunch of
Storytelling. See,
yes, this is a great story, right? I feel like a bunch of designers just screamed in terror, and they don't know why.
no, design systems are going to go the way of the dodo. They are going the way of the dodo. So let's spread that gospel so people are sufficiently afraid.
All right, picking fights here on Product Momentum. Fantastic. Audrey, this has been a great conversation. Have a few big takeaways out of, probably 3 dozen.
Wait, Paul had another question. Come on.
So
Do it.
I'll squeeze it in. We can work
Yeah,
that
you can
so
do it.
segue out in post. The question I hope this is a succinct question, and I think it might be a good one to wrap on, is forever we have conflated the idea of skills with role. Like, I am a product manager, therefore I have these skills. And I think what you've been talking about throughout our conversation has been, these are the skills that are evergreen, regardless of the role or title or technology,
Mhm.
communication, storytelling, the meaning making that product managers do. And I think what we're kind of all been talking about for the conversation today has been, saying you're a product manager is becoming less valuable than honing the skills of communication and the skills of problem solving and the skills of team building and being able to do discovery. And it's even hard to talk about, because when you post a job opening, you post for the role and you list all the skills as if they're the same thing. But I think the role that product managers fill is becoming a different role, but the skills are starting to become preeminent to the role. And that might be too much of an abstract take, but as you've been talking, the skills aspect of it has been kind of top of mind for me as you're kind of uncovering the shipyard methodology, the 3 speeds, where the bottlenecks are. All of these things come back to honing those skills that are agnostic of the role that we fill in the organization.
Yeah, look, I've always thought the skills, the mindset was way more important. I think that the role title just gives us a way to put it in a box,
Yep.
and we can ship it. But the title doesn't mean. Look, Microsoft calls product managers program managers, right? And they've refused to change. So that was an early. So for the early part of my career, I was called a program manager. And so, yeah, the title is nothing without the skills, because the skills, some people have shitty skills. Like even the 5 things I talked about, a lot of PMs aren't very good at it. In fact, I don't think people synthesize those 5 things really well, right? Basically, or even talk about it. Like we don't sing from the same hymn sheet, basically, for those things. So we sort of make it up in different ways. And there's a lot of variations of PMs, platform, user experience, whatever. I believe in full stack PM. So that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. It's a skill set. The skill set is maybe the only thing that matters. It's also a niche skill set. Like I said, it's not a lot of pedagogy. There's only apprenticeships. So,
Yeah.
which, by the way, bothers me, which is why I wrote the book, because I want more people to have the skill sets. And if you go from the first part of the book is like the core things, skill sets, and skills you need to do to ship really great products. And the last part of the team is how to lead people who have those great skill sets in a larger team. And it's unlike any product book you read, because it starts from simplicity to pricing, right? Versus all the bullshit that people talk about, like data, nah. So, so, anyway, yes, I agree with you. I don't think there's much more to add to that.
Well, I'm glad we got that one in, right? That's an important one. Actually, what was one of my takeaways, right? Yeah, in this world of AI, new tools, right? Gotta stick to first principles. Have to maintain those skills, yes, of storytelling, being communicators. Right. We should use AI to improve our product work, but we shouldn't use it as the first draft writer. Right. I think, yeah, that was a good one. Experience doesn't equal judgment. Judgment is super important in our role as product managers. We build that up through making good decisions, right? And in order to make good decisions, we need to make sure that we have good mentors, right? We're talking to people who are smarter than us, and we're making mistakes, right? We're learning from our mistakes. And then, yeah, one of the last takeaways I had was, in this world of AI, right? Maybe if the cycles for kind of coming up with solutions get faster, we become less attached to them, and then becomes easier to iterate. We're not living in the world of like sunk costs of like, hey, we just spent a year on this. Like this thing needs to last forever. Like we spent a day on it. Let's keep going. Let's keep making it better.
Let's learn quick from it. Yeah,
Yeah.
mindset. Sure. Yeah.
Before we go, something we like to ask all our guests. Mostly, I do it selfishly so that my Goodreads list gets longer. What's in your bookshelf? What are you reading?
Hmm. Wow. So I read a lot of my work is very my work and my brain tends to be serious, right? So I have uh one of the books. I met Tony Fadell last year, and he signed his book Build. Tony is a legend, ex Apple, ex Nest, I guess. He created Nest. So just a real legend. And if you don't know Tony, before he did Apple, he built um there's a company that died. You know the company? Tony worked at, it's not Newton, it was something before the Newton that he created. So just incredible thinker. Um so I recommend that if it's nonfiction. But I spend a lot of time reading fiction, because that's the way my brain gets creative. The book I'm gonna try to get into is a science fiction trilogy by uh N.K. Jemisin, right? I think she wrote a trilogy and she won 3 Hugo Awards, even more than in a row. So that's better than Asimov. So I'm gonna get into it over this holiday.
Awesome. Okay.
Got the Broken World trilogy. Yeah.
Love that. Oh, Audrey, it's been a blast. I learned a lot. Thanks for coming and joining us.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Paul. This was a pleasure.
Thanks, OG. Been a blast.